Hi friends! One of my very favorite passages of scripture is the feeding of the 5,000. Some could say that it's because I like a good fish sandwich, but it's probably because of what follows the miracle. And it helps me to better understand my own battles with trusting the Lord. In Matthew 14:22, this is where Jesus sends the disciples away after he has fed the multitude of people. And he sends them away with 12 baskets of leftovers. 12 baskets, 12 disciples. They have proof of the miracle that has just taken place. So let's read what happens with them next. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted the disciples get back into the boat, cross to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting against the heavy waves. And I don't know if you've ever tried to row a boat in a storm or against some strong winds. It is incredibly difficult, and it is incredibly exhausting. And the scripture even goes on to say in verse 25 that this was taking place about 3 o'clock in the morning. So they were exhausted. They had to have been dog tired. But the passage continues. And this is where Jesus came toward them walking on water. And when the disciples saw him, they were terrified. So now they were exhausted and terrified. But verse 27 says, "But Jesus spoke to them at once and said, 'Do not be afraid. Take courage, I am here.' Then Peter called to him, 'Lord, if it is really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water.' 'Yes, come,' Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and he began to sink. 'Save me, Lord,' he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. 'You have so little faith,' Jesus said. 'Why do you doubt me?' And here, all I can do is shake my head and say, I get it, Peter. Me too, buddy. Me too. But what I really love about this passage, actually in the account from John chapter 6, verse 21, it says, then they were willing to take him, Jesus, into the boat. In that moment, the disciples, not even just Peter, but all of them, the rest of them in the boat, were willing to introduce Jesus to their struggle. And at that moment of letting him in, the whole storm stopped. And immediately they arrived at their destination. Immediately. What would it mean for us to be willing to let him into the boat with us when we are exhausted, when we are terrified? It is easy to lose sight of the gift that God gives us when the winds and the waters rage around us. But if every single one of us, regardless of where we come from, what our backgrounds are, the types of struggles that we experience, or the number of times that we need to open mouth and insert foot like our buddy Peter, if we were willing to take Jesus into the boat, we could experience the tangible difference that he makes. Simply put, adding Jesus equals life to the fullest. God bless, friends.